Good evening. Let me welcome everyone to tonight's council meeting. Please join me in standing for the invocation to be given by Mr. Finch.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for all the blessings you've bestowed upon us. We recognize your providence and provision for us. We thank you for a great town. I pray that as we, as a council, make decisions, you give us wisdom and guidance in those decisions. And we pray for our country and for our land that you would heal us of this dreaded virus, that you would bring us together as a country and realize that we will move past this. Thank you again for all your blessings. In Jesus' name,
amen. Please join me standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening one more time. Welcome council and staff and the members of the audience. Thank you for joining us tonight. Let me call to order the town council meeting of Town of Sunnyvale for Monday, August 23rd. The time is 7:01. We have all council members except Mayor Pro-Tem Allen. Please keep Mr. Allen in your prayers as he's recovering from his with his surgery. The first item on the agenda is announcements. Pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.0415, the mayor and the council and the staff may report on various items. If anyone would like to make any announcement, you may do so at this time. Council, any announcements? Mr. Clark, do you have an announcement? He did indicate to me he has an announcement. That's what
I did. We're going to have a gathering for all of the new residents of Sunnyvale. And what's the date of that? September 23rd. So it's roughly a month away. And so we want to invite all the new residents of Sunnyvale to please come. And it's going to be here at the town hall, right? 5:30, 7:30, town hall, September 23rd. That's 1 month. All the new residents, and it'll be a nice meet and greet. And we would love to have you all come and get to meet the town council, get to meet other people that are involved in the town, and just really looking forward to it. So thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Clark. I am really looking forward to meeting the new residents. Council, are there any additional announcements? Staff, Susan, announcements, anybody? Okay, if there are no announcements, I'm going to close that. Moving on to the public forum. This is the time members of the audience may come forward and speak to the council on any items other than personal or legal matters or items on the agenda. If you'd like to come forward and speak to the council, you may do so at this time. If you are joining us via Zoom, you may raise your hand. No one coming forward from the chamber. Erica, anyone raising their hands?
No, sir.
No hands raised, so I'm going to close the public forum. Moving on to consent agenda items, we have item number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on the consent agenda. Council, would anyone like to remove any of the items from the consent agenda? If not, can I have a motion to approve consent agenda items 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6?
Motion to approve consent agenda items 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Made by Mr. Freeman, second by Mr. Clark to approve consent agenda items 2 through 6. All in favor signify. All opposed. Motion passed 6-0. Mayor Pro-Tem Allen is absent. Moving on to the discussion and action item portion of the agenda, item number 7. Discuss and consider the proposed budget presentation on all funds. Shuri, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, council. Can you hear me okay? We're going to discuss the budget from all funds, and we're just going to be presenting the items that are new. We're not going to talk about everything that's on the actual slides. So if you could move to the next slide for me. Okay, as you can see on our budget schedule, at August 23, we're just reviewing the budget, and it looks like we're almost halfway there to the new year.
Sorry, now I can hear you. Sorry. You can move it closer to you.
I had to squeal. Is that
It's
better?
okay. Thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. Our first fund is going to be the general fund. The updates from the previous presentation is the property tax revenue was calculated at a rate of 0.4493 and is budgeted at 4.6 million. Supplemental requests totaling 224,000 have been fully loaded into the budget, and you can see the breakdown on the next slide. Our excess reserves is 110,000, and we did put that in the non-departmental for the town council approved projects. So as you can see on that slide there, that is the supplementals that were put into the budget, 224,000. The gray area are the items that are not funded with the supplementals at this time. And on the next slide, you can see our actual summaries that have the updated supplemental information in there. And we are at our working capital operating days at 144. That's what we project. Any questions on the general fund?
I do have a small question. I know that we had discussed having the excess reserves of the 110,768 with the tax rate. I was not aware that I know that we had kind of given general idea of where we might want that to go, but I wasn't aware that we had made any final decisions on.
Just for purposes of this meeting, we put it in one line item,
Got it.
lumped it together, and it says council, which is really us waiting for you all to tell us what you want us to do with.
Awesome. Thank you.
So it'd be easy for us to fix it if
Mhm.
you change it between now and budget adoption.
That is perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Next slide is for the General Fund Economic Development Fund. And as you can see, there's no changes from our previous presentation. So we'll just move through those slides unless you have
Let
specific
me, I'm
questions.
sorry. Can I go back for a second?
Yes, sir.
On the supplemental budget. And then we talked about the fire department, 3 full-time. Susan, we are still waiting for the SAFR grant.
Yes, we have not received any word on the SAFER grant, and I've been in contact with Peggy and the chief routinely. We are working it. We're trying to get an answer, but we don't have an answer yes or no at this point.
Thank you, man. Keep going.
Okay. On the General Fund Economic Development Fund, like I said earlier, there's no changes. This is the same that we presented previously. Moving on to the Water Fund. On our updates to our previous presentation, we did get a re-rate information from the City of Garland. They came in at 3.05 compared to the 2.99 that we currently have. So we put that into the budget. And the City of Mesquite, we have an unofficial no change, so we didn't do anything with their rates. The water re-rate information for the North Texas Municipal Water District is preliminary at this time. We'll probably get that information closer to the end of September, but we budgeted an 8% increase. The supplementals that were for the water fund of $17,350, those were put into the budget. And then the funding for our water and wastewater rate study of $30,000 is it's in the budget and anticipated to start next year.
How often do we do that? Like every 3 years, every 5 years?
I believe it was 5 years, but we asked for it off cycle for two reasons. One, because we had the big jump in take or pay last year at the end of last fiscal year. And so it concerned me how much that was. I wasn't here for the last study, so I was concerned, was that taken into consideration? Is that going to knock us out of, good financial planning? And the second reason why I wanted it done in this coming year was because of the change in the North Texas Municipal Water District contract. Our whole methodology is going to change. And so we want to make sure we're understanding when it's optimal for us to do that and what the impact to our rate structure is going to be.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am. Mr.
just
Egan?
an informational question. What is that 6 cents difference in the per 1,000 gallons? What does that number end up being on an annual basis? Roughly? Not exact, but roughly. on the sewer?
On the sewer,
It was 299, now it's 305 per thousand.
yeah.
Well, correct, but what is that number? I mean, are we talking $60,000? We talking $1,000? Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Is that Mr. Egan? Okay. Any questions? Okay, keep going, Sherry.
I'll definitely get back to you on that. On the water fund, those are the changes that we made. And looking at the next slide, those have been included in the proposed summaries. We're anticipating or projecting for the working capital to be $4.2 million. Any other questions on the water fund? Okay, moving on to debt service. The interest and sinking ad valorem tax revenue is budgeted at 1.9 million and is based on the truth and taxation calculator rate of 0.1318. That should raise enough money to cover our debt payments for next year. The projected end fund balance is expected to be 502,000. And looking at the summary, those are included in the summaries for next year.
One question for you.
Yes,
The debt service, 502.
yes, yes, sir.
We talked about refinancing. Did that increase? Is that the reason why the 502, or is that, so that,
I don't think we're assuming it's the refinancing has happened in this scenario because it hasn't. And so, you know, it's a opportunity that we hope we can take advantage of, but right now it's not included in this methodology. If we do, we'll have a little bit bigger fund balance if it kicks in. But I think when we talked to our financial advisor about this 502 number, you know, we were kind of questioning, is that too much? But he felt like it was really important for the fund balance moving into next year. So, you know, we discussed this quite a bit and he was really comfortable with this level.
so what do we do with the fund balance of the debt service?
Well, whenever we issue debt, like the next time, it can go towards that, or it can
Right.
go towards if we
Course.
have an increase in payments or something like that. So he really felt like it was a great position to have this healthy fund balance, and it will help with our S&P ratings next time.
Correct.
Maybe detailed question. When you say healthy balance, is $500,000 is a healthy number, or
Well,
a percentage of a debt? What's considered healthy?
Sure. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Normally, you would have like 1/12 of your debt payments in your fund balance, which would be, I guess, around 200,000 approximately. So we're a little bit above that, but not knowing what this refunding is
So
going to be.
200,000 is the 1/12.
Yes, approximately 200,000.
So we are quite healthy.
Yes.
Okay.
But if you're looking at to refinance or even go out for a new issue in the spring, I'm not saying that we are, but if you were, you would use some of this fund balance to offset those costs.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions on debt service? We'll move on to the road impact fund. As you can see, there's been no changes on the road impact fund. These are the same information that we presented last time.
One question on this one, the projected ending fund balances. I know we got revenues and expenses. In our expenses, I'm assuming some of the commitments we have made to future developments. Is that already taken into account, that deduction?
Yes, sir. I think one of the things I was going to mention on this is that although it's not budgeted yet, I've been keeping the council and your weekly updates apprised of the streetlight issue. Most likely on our next version, when we come back, there's likely going to be a change to this account because that's probably where we'll end up budgeting that in. So we'll bring that to your attention when it happens. We haven't taken that step because we're waiting for final numbers and where we land with that, but it most likely will end up in this budget.
So we'll end up in 2022 budget, not the current budget.
most likely, that's what we're assuming based upon the lead time to get those. But we still have capacity with Collins Road. There's a maximum amount that could be charged to this under our impact fee budget, and we have capacity, so it's the logical place to pay for that from. And just to, for any of you who might not have read that, it's that we are at the end of Collins Road and all of the funds have been expended, but we have a couple of things we still need to purchase for it. And so again, we have capacity and impact. That's what it's for. It was a designated project in our plan. We just have never had to tap it that much. So now we probably will need to bring that project to closure. And so in our next version, we'll bring this back to you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the road impact?
Good to go.
Now we have the water and sewer impact funds. We didn't have any changes from our previous presentation on this particular fund. Those are the same numbers as previously presented. We're still looking at projection of ending fund balance of 2.1 million.
So again, the question here, what is healthy in this case? Is that too much, too little, just right?
Well, I think you have to look at your CIP,
Right.
CIP plan, and there are well enough projects to spend all of this money. So I think it's important to let it build up and then let us start kicking out those CIP projects. One of them that we're working on right now, I think it's budgeted right now for this coming year to do the study on the pump station. And so we know that pump station is going to need significant work to it. And so that study will tell us what the scale of that work needs to be, and then we'll turn around and we'll need to pay for that. So I think this is not a lot of money.
Okay.
And
So-
the other thing is just remember that you see that bullet point that says no budget assumptions made for commercial impact fees. That means that all these major commercial projects that we are collecting impact fees, we don't budget for that. So, we will collect them and then that'll become part of your fund balance. We just don't know what's on the horizon.
So the 2.152 is after baking in all the current CIP expenses.
Yes, and it's also with the assumption of the 95 residential permits that you see at the top. But again, we're not predicting the commercial because you don't know what's going to come to fruition. So we wait for that to happen during the fiscal year instead of trying to predict it. And, as time goes on and we are at this pace of development, we might get more comfortable predicting. But right now, we're just gearing up with a lot of commercial development. So we didn't take a stab at predicting them, but they'll just go into the fund balance. And like I said, we have a lot of projects that are on that list that these funds can be used for, but we want to start with the pump station because it is a TCEQ requirement. And so we did budget for that study. And Brian's here if you have questions on that.
So Brian, it's already, the study is underway. Remind me again.
Not yet.
Not yet.
We're budgeting for
Next
it.
year. So it's going to be next budget?
Yes, sir.
Is that already, the study is already baked into the expense?
Yes, sir. It's right there where it says other, no, it says under there, which one is it, Sherry?
Planning.
Services, right?
Planning services.
Yeah.
The
under
$25,000?
Mhm.
Okay.
So we'll do the plan, which will define the scope. Then we will contract for design. Then we'll contract for construction.
And when you design and all, potentially this could be a source for it.
Yes, sir. A percentage of it.
All right, thanks.
Other questions? Any other?
Council, any questions for Shirley?
Okay.
It's good to go.
Okay, let's move on to the CIP fund. Okay. The Collins Road Phase 1 is still expected to be completed by the end of this fiscal year. The remaining balance of the tax notes for public safety is estimated at 1.6 million and will be used to fund the gap in the construction for the new fire station for next year. The TBD capital projects is budgeted at 85,000 for the remainder of the town's contribution to the Barnes Bridge project. And then the following CIPs are estimates as of today, or as of July. The drainage improvements are estimated at 5.7 million and includes the Collin Road Phase 2 design at 450. The sewer line improvements are estimated at 1.8 million. The fire station construction budget will roll forward into the 21-22 budget year and is estimated at 5.4 million. And then the road construction budget will roll forward into the next year's budget and is estimated at 500,000. And those figures are into the proposed budget on the next summary schedule. Any questions on the CIP fund details? Okay, thank you. Moving on to the 4B Economic Development Fund. We did have some updates from the previous presentation. The labor and benefits category updated to include the addition of the part-time administrative assistant that was approved, and then a merit increase for the EDC director. The planning line item was updated to include funding of the community rec library center feasibility study at $37,005. That's 75% of the cost. And again, those are included in the proposed summary on the next page. Any questions on the 4B economic updates? No questions? Okay. The next fund we have is the homestead amenities, and we did not have any changes to that fund at all. And then we have the special revenue. For the budget assumptions, they pretty much stayed the same. We just wanted to clarify what each one of those different special revenues are. So you have that in front of you, but I wanted to draw your attention to the last item, which is the American Rescue Plan funds. We are going to get 1.6 million over a 2-year period. So we did get the 847,000 last week. It's not reflected in the document here. We will be updating that document for you next month when you see that. So we'll get approximately the 847,000 again next year and the same time frame approximately. And if you'll move to the next slide, you can see where we show on the American Rescue that there's no receipts today. That was at the time when we actually had this PowerPoint for you, but we did receive the 847,000.
Question, but Susan, will we get that this fiscal year or next fiscal year?
We got it this fiscal year and we will receive the same amount next fiscal year. So probably in our next meeting, we'll bring a budget amendment for this fiscal year to accept that money into our budget. And I will bring to you our recommendations for expending it. If you recall, we have discussed that once before, and we had discussion about a particular sewer project as it relates to Trip Road. So most likely that's going to be our primary recommendation, but there's other recommendations that go along with that, and we'll bring all that to you most likely at our next meeting.
So the budget amendment potentially will have expenses this year?
Yes, sir. And it's
Just roll-
strange
just
timing,
rolled over,
everything
yeah.
will roll over, yeah.
Thanks.
But we need to accept it into this budget since we've received it, and we'll delineate how we would like to spend it and get your approval of that.
And Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, that money can only be spent on new projects and not rebuild of old projects where we have like a sewer system.
I would need to do a little more research on the rebuild question. It's more what I've read so far, and there's several of us that have gone to sessions and read a lot on this, but it's very specific uses. And so it's strangely enough, water and sewer is one of those uses, but I can't recall if there was something about it having to be new and expanding service. But if that's something you're interested in, let's talk and I can do more research on that. Okay. Lyle did provide me on the TRIP project an estimated cost, and it's going to take a hefty chunk out of this amount, at least year one. So.
And that doesn't apply to wastewater, does it?
Yes, sir, it does.
Any other questions?
Question about the TRIP project. Is that, what phase are we currently in?
Well, what the trip project would be going from the manhole that's in Glacier property across the Glacier property, then go under Trip Road and then extend either direction on Trip Road to tie those residents into sewer, but it also allow the fire station to tie into the sewer as well.
Right, okay. So what about the drainage issues on TRIP?
Okay, so those are all under design, but there's two that affect Trip. One is on this side of Trip and one is on the other side of Trip. Both of those are almost done, Lyle. 95% done in design.
Yes, that's correct. The one on the west side of Collins, I actually have the bid documents on my desk at this time. We're, reviewing them, making sure everything is in order before we bid it. And then I anticipate the one on the east side of Collins, they're just basically wrapping up a few details, and I expect to have those plans in very, very soon.
So we're very close to going out to bid on those.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Different source of funding.
And Susan, back to my previous statement, I may have misspoke. I said wastewater, I meant stormwater.
Oh,
Would it be applicable to stormwater drainage?
I don't know that one.
yeah, I'm really sorry, sir. I don't
That's fine,
think,
that's fine.
I want to say no on stormwater, but let me verify this a source of funding that's new to us. And since we had already kind of talked about kind of initial thoughts of how to use the funds, I didn't look into that yet.
I'm just curious to know, in the event there's some leftover money or something like that, that there might be some other areas that we could use it.
Certainly, I'll get that information. And I have some summary documents I'm happy to share with the council too, so it might spark some other thoughts.
Additional questions or discussions, council? Good to go, Sherry.
Okay, and we have one more fund left, and that's the PEG fund. We didn't really make any changes to the fund itself, other than staff is creating a PEG station and to access the current funding that we have in place at this time.
And that'll come before you guys to vote. We have, I think it's 70, how much is it? 70,000?
Yes.
So that funding has just been sitting there growing with interest. And Joseph has done a lot of work to research. If we want to go ahead and create the PEG station, then we could tap into these funds. And we've talked to Erica a lot because Erica would probably be the person who would end up running it. So I think we're interested in moving forward with it, but we will bring it to council because if we have two options, we can just do it for a year as a trial and just access these funds, or we can re-implement the what's it? It's not a tap, is it a tap?
It's the TV, right? I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a fee that we terminated several years ago that we would have to re-implement in order to do this on an ongoing basis. So we'll bring you those options for you all to consider, just so that we can stop rolling this money forward and actually use it for a beneficial purpose.
Thanks, Sherry.
And that is all the funds to go through for tonight. You have your ENCODE detail reports at the end of the presentation, and we did put in there the CIP plan if you needed to have a refresher of all the different projects for the CIP.
Council, any questions for staff on this one?
I also want to just tell you, you have at your desk a flyer that looks like this, and it's just an easy to understand explanation of what property tax exemptions we have, and we'll be sharing this with the public as well. And then you have a benchmark on our tax rates against the cities we normally benchmark against. You see this in your monthly report. And then finally, just the document that you looked at last meeting, the 3 scenarios for tax rates. Right now, we went with the kind of mid-level approach, but I just wanted to give this all to you again in case there was any other discussion.
I do have a question. So tax exemption, we have senior disability, age 65 older, disabled veterans. Are there other exemptions our benchmark cities or other cities offer to their residents? If you don't know the answer, that's okay.
Yeah, I had sent you all previously, and I can resend it.
Yeah.
Just a complete list of what our other cities in Dallas County do, because we have that information. Our school district does have a $25,000 homestead, general homestead exemption. We looked at that when I had sent it to you last time, but none of our benchmark cities had that. So, and with our tax rate being lower, and they didn't have it either. So I think last time we kind of felt like we were offering quite a bit compared to our benchmark cities, but I can definitely send that summary.
So the
to you all.
homestead exemption applies to everybody, basically. That's almost like reducing the tax rate
Yes, sir.
because it's equally applies to everybody. Okay. Yeah, if there are other exemptions, at least I like to take a look at it.
We can do that.
Council, any questions or discussions on the budget? Okay, Shirley, thank you very much, ma'am. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to item number 8, discuss, consider, and act upon resolution 21-34, modifying the town personnel policies to revise compliance procedures, leave policies, and COVID-19 related actions. Good evening, Susan. Would that be you, Susan? Natasha, good evening, ma'am.
Good afternoon. How are y'all doing, Mayor and Council? Right now, we included 3 updates per the legislative that were included into the manual. It was the mental health leave policy, the public safety quarantine leave policy, and the disease presumption. We updated 3 policies, which were the complaint and reporting procedures for harassment and discrimination, the grievance and appeal policy, and the military leave policy. The ones that we updated, they were also some from legislature, but it was also some that we benchmarked just to make sure that we were up to date with our policies and procedures due to recent events that occurred. So one was for our grievance and appeal policy. We wanted to make sure that we had a specific dates and deadlines and procedures that everyone had to meet. That way it would benefit our employee as well as our town. And then also on our complaint and reporting procedures, it stated from legislature that we had to make sure that if you are aware of any type of harassment, it did state sexual harassment, that you have to report it to your supervisor as well as human resources and the town manager. So we wanted to make sure that we included that as well. And then on a military leave, we recently had someone who needed military leave, and our policy was not up to date per the Texas government codes. And so we wanted to make sure we got it up to date with the 15 days that they are able to use. And so that information was updated as well, and it was also benchmarked. The one last thing I think was also the pandemic response policy. We included it so that way it would align with our CDC guidelines, since now we have the vaccinated and unvaccinated portions.
Council, any questions for Natasha? Okay, if there are none, I'm going to call, before I call for motion, I'm going to open up for public comments. If there's anyone from the members of the audience who would like to come forward and speak to the council on item number 8, you may do so. If you are joining us via Zoom, you may raise your hand. No one is coming forward from the chamber. Erica, anyone raising their hands?
No, sir.
No hands raised, so I'm going to close the public comments. Council, are there any additional discussions or questions or comments on item number 8? If there are none, I call for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Ehrlich,
Second.
second by Mr. Clark to approve item number 8 as presented. Are there additional discussions or questions? Susan, some of these policies will expire once the governor removes the. Okay. Okay. Additional questions or discussions? If not, all in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 6-0. Mr. Allen is absent. Moving on to item number 9, mayor and council requests for future staff updates and agenda items. Council. Okay, if there are none, I call for a motion to recess into executive session pursuant to chapter 551, subchapter D of the Texas Government Code. There are 3 items, section 551.087 economic development, project bond, 551.074 personnel matters, police sergeant, 551.071 consultation with attorney, Lyons Road.
I'd like to make a motion to recess into executive session pursuant to chapter 551, subchapter D of the Texas Government Code.
Motion made by Mr. Freeman to recess into executive session.
Second.
Second by Mr. Eldridge. All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 6-0. We are in executive session. Now time is 7:36. So back on. Now time is 7:38. We are reconvening into the regular session. Council, I am going to ask for public comments, especially on the item budget, item number 7, I believe. So if there are anyone from the members of the audience who would like to come forward and speak to the council on item number 7, you may do so. If you are joining us via Zoom, you may raise your hand. Good evening, ma'am. Would you state your name and address for the record, please?
Cindy, let me take this off. Cindy Bernowski, 106 Big Bend Circle. I'm going to pass this to y'all to have to look at. First of all, I want to thank you for coming back in for this. This is a kind of a passion thing for me. And I'm coming to you as a citizen, not a part of a board, not a part of an organization, and bringing you some information that kind of startled me. I was going through some files and stuff over the weekend and happened to run across a 2010-2011 budget. And of course, I'm on the library board, so I have the 2020-21 budget. And so I took the categories that your finances are set up in for the town. salary, supplies, and materials, which that I want to say includes not only books, DVDs, and that kind of thing, but also includes the electric bill and other things in that way. So it's not just library books and things like that. Contracted services, which is the cleaning, training dues, and subscription. If you look at the budget for 2010 on the salaries, and then it moves enormously on 2021, we went from a part-time, no MLS degree director into a full-time educated MLS director. So that's the reason for the huge budget change in that. Also, our other salaried workers got a little bit of a raise, not much. But then if you start looking at the supplies, which to me, when I look at the library, that's the most important part because that's the meat of what we do. And so if you look at that in a 10-year period, we spent less than $5,000 more. And if you look at the contractual services for cleaning, it went down $300. If you look at the training, it went down $790. So you're looking at quite a budget cut over a 10-year period, which the next part really was shocking. Let me clarify the numbers on the population. I took them off the internet, and the 6841 is probably not real accurate because it's like a 2019 number. So I'm sure it's a lot bigger than that now. Probably closer to 7,500 maybe. I'm not sure. Anyway, so then I took the budget information was there, and then I kind of just divided it up. So if you look at the meat of what I call the library, and you divide it by the citizens we have, we were spending $8 a citizen. Now we're spending $6.60. And then if you look at the population with the salary, of course, it looks like it's going up because we do, as I said before, now we have a certified director. So this was startling to me, that the library can do what it does on the amount of money that's budgeted for them. Because if you think about it, in the year 2010, most books were bought at the library for $10 to $15. Now the library has to pay $20 to $25. So that cuts in half almost the amount of new books that can come. So how in the world are we supposed to stay current with what the public wants if you don't have the money? So it's really kind of disconcerting. And then there's no money in there to do anything new and different, nothing innovative, because there's no money for programs and author visits and fun activities for the kids, or even anything extra to do for adults. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention because when I looked at that, it was very startling to me and very depressing. So anyway, thank you for coming back in. I
Cindy,
appreciate it.
before you walk, if you don't mind, just let me understand the point you're trying to make. Your point is that in 10 years, if every single populace, right, uses the library, you're saying that per capita or per person, the amount has gone down 140. Is that
Oh,
is
yeah.
that your concern? Okay.
Yeah, it's gone down. It's
What's your
not-
recommendation?
Y'all give us more money. The library needs more money to function. It's the one amenity that the town offers to everybody. And so therefore, you know, and people talk about the library is changing. Yes, it's changing, but we don't have any money to change. You know, and I'm on the committee for the rec center library, and I, you know, really am on there because of my passion for the library. And it needs to change. I know it needs to change. The people at the library knows it needs to change. But if you haven't got the square foot and you haven't got the dollars, then you can't change. And so we can't be as relevant to the town as they would like to be and as I would like to see it be, because there's just not the dollars or the square footage to do it.
Appreciate the comments. So, staff, I'm going to ask a couple of questions. Thank you, Cindy. Any questions for Cindy? I know this is not a discussion time, so thank you very much. Rachel, maybe it's your point. I don't know, it's your, maybe Susan. I don't know what's the usage. The number in the 10 years, I know the population has grown. I don't know there's a decrease in the number of people use the library. I don't know the answer. I'm just asking open, honest. You don't need an answer. Just kind of give us some
Yeah.
information later.
And we can bring that information back to you because it is something we track in our monthly report.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And the other thing is, addition to this one, I know there's a Friends of Library funds, there's XM, I forgot exactly how much, one of the gentlemen was trying to tell me and I forgot exactly. I know there's a a bucket of money.
Yes, sir.
I don't know that money is for, what is the money for? Is
My-
that for,
My understanding is it's more of a capital type of expenditure. So when we talked to them about helping with the study for the new library,
Okay.
they said, no, not at this time, but that if we go into construction, we can come back and ask again. So,
okay, all right. So that is not for supplies or materials or any of those stuff.
I believe in the past, there have been occasion where we've asked for particular items and they have funded those, but generally speaking, no.
I'm going to ask you one other thing. I know typically people try to operate within the budget. That's just the normal. Have they come forward with any activities? We said no, because there's no funding. That may be an open question, a broad question. Or in other words, if they want to conduct a certain type of programs, we said can't do it because you don't have the budget.
I believe that they did submit a couple of supplemental requests. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but one of them we were able to cancel. He had cable, we've looked for other funding sources. So he asked for one particular thing. Rachel, what was it? And then he canceled his cable TV in order to do it.
Yeah, it was some subscription to get books electronically, I believe.
And so he put in a supplemental request. So during our budget meetings, we noticed, and I sign the invoice every month, that he was paying for cable TV. So we asked, what are you using cable TV for? Because it's a pretty hefty bill. He said, we like to have the news up on the monitor. So we discussed, could you use Roku? That's what we ended up with. Could you use Roku instead? And he said, well, let me look into that. He looked into it and he was able to. So that saved that expense, which we then reallocated for this other subscription. And that's the other thing that I would say, and I'm not opposed to this. It's just, there's so much, pie available, and how do we carve it up? But a lot of their, a lot of services have gone electronic. And I know that Joseph's been working with him on particular grants that would even help that even further. So, we do recognize that they're doing a
Yeah.
lot for our community.
The other thing is look at a strategy. What is the strategy for library, right? Now, 2021, how does it look like in 5 years, 10 years? What is it, right? So still paper, maybe some
Yeah.
portion of the population will still use the books.
Mhm.
What is
Yeah.
going to happen, right? What's the strategy? Maybe it's hard to kind of figure out everything in the next month or two, but
Well, and I
see what we
think
can.
this study that we're undertaking for the community rec center / library, I think part of that will look into that, like what is the vision for the future? How will this facility evolve to meet the needs of our community? So we're very excited about that project, and we think it's directly applicable to their budget and how do we evolve? So, okay.
Thank you, Susan. Council, any requests or discussions on this topic? Mr. Egan?
Mayor, I just did a quick calculation. If you brought the 660 up to $8, that's $13,000 roughly. That's half a day operating expenses, 3/4 of a day. We're not talking about bukus of money.
I'm not my point is always what's the vision, right? How does the library, I think we understand the vision for it, right?
I don't disagree. And I've always said we'll do things if we can pay for it.
Yep.
I think there's a short-term vision aspect and there's a long-term vision aspect. You're totally right. What Susan talked about is all long-term. To me, it's more long-term. But maybe the library needs help today. I don't use it, but my wife does, and several of our neighbors do. I don't know if they're not getting the books they'd like to have because they don't do it electronically. They like to go by there and get their book. And that's all well and good, but we're talking about $13,000.
Yeah, you're right. Some of your neighbors call me about library because I do respect, because some of them likes the books. So it's that population will always be there. That's just no doubt. Okay. Cindy, thank you so much for coming and talking to us. Okay, so counts. Do I want to take one more vote to recess the executive session, or?
I would, since you reconvened.
Not a problem.
Mayor, will you go ahead and close for public comments?
Yes, okay. So no one else is coming forward from the chamber. Erika, anyone calling in via Zoom?
No, sir.
No one else is calling it, so I'm going to close the public forum. Rachel, thank you for keeping me straight. That time is, council can have a motion to recess into executive session pursuant to chapter 551, subchapter D. Item number 10, section 551-087, economic development, project bond. 11, section 551-074, personnel matters, police sergeant. 12, section 551.07, consultation with attorney, Lions Road.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn into executive councils under section 551, subchapter D. Yes.
Motion made by Mr. Freeman to adjourn to recess into executive session pursuant to chapter 551, subchapter D of the Texas Government Code. Second by Eldridge. All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 6-0. Mr. Allen is absent. Now time is 8:07:51 and we are in executive session. Mine or yours? You're good? Okay, now time is 8:29. We are back in open session. I can confirm that as a result of the executive session, no action is to be taken on item number 11 and 12. But item number 10, can I have a motion with respect to item number 10, please? Brenda, can we just say approve, or we have to go through the whole?
So you can say that, you can make a motion to approve the resolution as discussion in executive session.
Make a motion to approve the resolution as discussed in executive session.
Motion made
Second.
by Mr. Freeman, second by Mr. Clark to approve item number 10 and the resolution as discussed in the executive session. Everyone heard the motion? Are there any discussions? No discussion, right? All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 6-0. Mr. Allen is absent. Council, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Freeman, second by Mr. Clark to adjourn. All in motion favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 6-0. The time is 8:30 and the meeting is adjourned. I want to thank council and staff and the members of the audience for joining tonight's session. Have a good night.